urban innovation with a special emphasis on mobility, of course, and also of freeing up space, so what we call the public realm in cities. And amongst, of course, land-based modalities of transport, we certainly see waterborne transportation of people and of goods and of waste disposal as part of the greater solution for many cities. And of course, in this context, ITS is an obvious place to look. And what we have in focus right now, we have identified on the basis of several hundreds of city challenges from our city partners. We have identified 9 what so-called challenge areas, and a special focus these years on 3 of them: sustainable city logistics, future, i.e. digital mobility, active mobility, creating the public realm, and mobility and energy. And in several of these 5 key focus areas, we have, of course, ITS and certainly the maritime aspects of it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to interesting talks now from our presenters.
Thank you, Henrik. Thank you so much for those words. So I will give the floor to Mr. Edvik from the Norwegian Coastal Administration. Please, if you want to share your presentation.
Yes, good morning to everybody. Thank you for asking me when such an important person as Jakob Trelling didn't manage to participate. So this morning, you can imagine what I have done this morning in between another meeting. I will try now to share my presentation with you and my thoughts. Do you see my presentation in presentation format? No.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Jon Leon Ervik. I'm the head of the Department for Navigation Technology and Pilot Management in the Norwegian Coastal Administration. My first thought is that it's very difficult to be realistic or divide between the realistic and the vision. We have so many visions, but we also need to be realistic. If we look at the European policy, where we are much involved, of course, and we like to be involved in that because we have the same policy in Norway, and we are moving in the same direction. We have mobility, technical tools, standard interoperability, and so on. But if you look at the 10T program, that also is a mechanism or a tool in EU, you will see that it's much about road. Much about road. Why? Because everybody used the road. And it might be that the maritime transport is a little bit out of sight. We know there is something that is transported from China to Europe, from United States to Europe, and from Europe to United States, and so on. But we don't see it every day. But let me remind you that this is a global, maritime transport is global. It's the oldest transport form. It was even a transport form before we could ride a horse. Why? Because we populated islands. So there was a kind of maritime transport 5,000 years ago. The newest one, that is also global is aviation, of course. And sometimes we say we have to learn something from aviation in maritime business, but keep in mind that they start with blank sheets for just 100 years ago, but we have traditions for maybe 5,000 years, and we also have this freedom of the sea that shows up in the 16th, 17th century. So out of sight, this maritime transport maybe 80–90% of the global transport volume. If you have an accident, it have a great impact on everything. We even make movies. We don't make so many movies of car crash or train accidents, but when we have a large disaster at sea, it's something that we remember for decades. So please, when we talk about ITS, please try to remember the one transport form that is connecting regions and countries around the globe together and make this dynamic transport happen. To look into the future, there is many factors that can change the game. One of those is the post-pandemic protectionism. We are now used to open markets, but it might be that some countries find out that, okay, let's not have this open market, let's be more protected, because it's worked during the pandemic. We can have a different kind of policies and developments in regions that will influence, and major accidents always, disaster always have an effects on the future policy. But let us assume that in Europe we are stable. We are going ahead in Europe. And let us assume that most of what we transport today, what we need in a common life, will still be the reality in 15 years from now. Then the focus will be to prevent accidents. We don't need fish in oil. Norway, for instance, will be out of business. Nobody around Europe will eat fish from Norway if we have a pollution. And there is a trend that we are moving we are on the door to go into the technical and digital world. Some other transport form is probably have moved before us, and the financial world is one of the examples where they have moved into the digital world. But the maritime industry, the maritime transport, will come now. And the trend is like this. This is a snapshot from the same harbor, where we only go 10 years back, maybe 20 years back. We have small vessels, and not this huge vessels carrying thousands of passengers. And it's a potential disaster is only increasing, and it's more advanced. But the nature and the geography is the same. You can't change that. So it will be more difficult to move into Norwegian fjords. It will the potential for or a risk for an accident is increasing, and we need to try to do something with it. I think that in the future the systems will first of all support the human. Everybody talks about autonomous vessels as it is unmanned vessels, but keep in mind that we already have autonomous process, artificial intelligence, that support humans in the daily processes. And this will be the major market. And then we will of course have totally autonomous vessels in the picture. It's not the one day we have human navigating vessels and the next day we have autonomous vessels. It will be a mix, and it will be a very slow evaluation where we start with these concepts and maybe somewhere down the road increase that concept to other areas. But cruise vessels with 3,000 people on board will not be unmanned, but there will be a lot of artificial intelligence that support the humans on board. Another trend is that we have several ports, for instance, that look at efficiency and just-in-time arrival. Here is one example where they look at, for instance, digital twins. Digital twins, keep that in mind. Once we have digital information, we can build up digital twins. This will increase the port operations, in my view, a lot. And if you look at one example, we have this concepts from Finland. I like it. I was presented it just a few weeks ago, and this is where we are heading. So when we look at the European 10T roadmap, if we include the digital sea routes, we will have this multimodal ports where goods, 80% of the goods will go to road or railway. This is the bottleneck where we have to focus on, and we have a great potential to actually increase this efficiency and user experience for everybody. From the governmental point of view, we will of course make use of this new era, new technologies, to build up a better situation awareness and share that information by using new technologies, new communications technologies, and facilitate smart decision making. Plans for the 50 next years. I didn't move further. It's very difficult because there is some game changers. I don't believe there will be big game changers without those I have mentioned. We never know. But we know that there will be requirements for sustainability and environmental friendly solutions. No doubt. There is no way out. Maritime transport is becoming more and more digital. No doubt. We will never go back to paper charts or sextants or whatsoever. And artificial intelligence will first of foremost support the human, as I said. We already have some systems, and it will be more and more this good buddy who will help us in the daily business. But there will also be new innovative new concepts. In my experience, when we start to sit together in the ITS community and share experience between different transport mode, for instance, we learn new things. And once we learn new things, we also see new opportunities. The door is open for new opportunities. So there will be new concepts, indeed. And then back to the question, are we yet there? This is from Wilhelmsen, a presentation, and he stated that we have just started a new major technology shift. And this is one of the major shipping companies, or they have logistic everything within their company, who stated this, and I'm so agree. We are far from, and the Maritime ITS is important for a maritime digital future. So please include the Maritime ITS. We are dependent on that. And that is my conclusion and my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jan Leon. One thing I know we've discussed many times is about the standardization and the harmonization. I mean, it's not just ship to ship or ship to port and to land, but it's also the multimodal aspect of it if we're going to make it work. How much do you work and how much does it require still the standardization work? Is that are we there yet?
No, and it's difficult. I was thinking about including a small picture that illustrated from Sintef, where they have a picture showing that there is, if you look at the mobile, there is so many mobiles around the globe, billions of them, and it's only 2 platforms. in the maritime industry, you almost have one platform for each ship. There is no good harmonization. We have IMO. There is some, and we have different other international organizations who work on this. IHO is one of the examples where I work also. But we have so far to go before we have good standardizations, good product specifications that cover a global harmonized exchange of information. I think it's important to start in our region. I think it's important to start in Europe. I think it's important to find good solutions that we can promote in IMO and invite other regions, because we are far from reaching it yet.
Because that, I guess, also can help when you talked about the bottleneck and increasing efficiency. I mean, that is an important question to solve the standardization as well, to help improve that, solve those bottlenecks or improve the efficiency and safety.
Yes, everything is connected. If you remove the bottlenecks, the human don't need to focus so much on it, because everything goes smoothly and smart. If we can do that, then human can have this capacity to focus on the more crucial part. For us, it's of course safety of navigation, make sure that you don't end up with a catastrophe, pollute our coastline and so on. So everything is connected. And then you have the users. Don't forget the users in the end. You want to know the footprint, even on fish. In the future, if a restaurant can tell you that this fish is catched in Lofoten, cod, fresh water, it's transported with low temperature all the way, and it's only 2 days old. You can imagine, like wine. We know about wine all the way, that wine is this quality and so on. It tastes like this. Ah, great, I want that bottle of wine. What about the fish? What about other products? And also the environmental footprint. It will be more and more important to monitor the footprint, in my view.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jan Leon, for stepping in such a short notice. We're very pleased that you could join us, and thank you for those insights. And it was a very good start for our next presenter, Mr. Halvor Wisley, the COO from Hydrolift Smart City Ferries, or HIKE. And we will hear from you now about autonomous vessels, and we will look forward to that. So please share your presentation.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I hope you can all hear me and see my presentation.
We can.
Awesome, awesome. So yeah, thank you very much, and thanks for having me, and thanks for giving me a couple of extra minutes here, Jan Leon. I don't know if they're mine to use, but let's see how strict Jenny will be. So so as our name suggests, we're HIKE, or Hydrolift Smart City Ferries, is a spin-off from boat manufacturer Hydrolift, and we've been manufacturing boats for about 30 years, primarily aimed at the leisure market and to an increasing degree the professional market. Now, what we're seeing from that side of our company is that there's so much going on, and there's so many new technologies coming in, new business models, and all of that kind of made us think that is there a place for us in other segments other than the pleasure and professional markets for boats. So stepping into sort of the mobility side and ferry side was a natural step for us. Now, what's important about this is that, of course, we're talking about passenger vessels in our case, which is slightly different, and it kind of ups the ante a little bit when it comes to autonomy and the requirements for autonomy. So I'm going to be speaking about that in a little while. But let's first focus on actually one of I'll pick up where Jan Leon started as well, in talking about why are our cities located where they are. and the fact that most of our cities around the world are indeed connected to water, and this has, you know, historical grounds. And over the last century or so, you know, it's become more and more of an obstacle, our waterways. And so you know, we've been trying to sort of move away from transporting water and basically looking at water as an obstacle and doing everything we can to avoid it. Building bridges, tunnels, and, you know, and those means that we set in place to overcome water become choke points in land-based traffic. What we want to do here is obviously change that. Instead of thinking of ferries as part of the urban transportation equation as a last resort, we want to kind of move that over to become a first consideration. And in order to do that, there's a number of things that we must overcome, and one of them is actually cost. As simple as that. Operating ferries today is highly expensive compared to land-based alternatives, and we need to do something about that. And our point, or our view in this matter, is that we need to sort of start from scratch and look at everything, starting at vessel development. So obviously we're aiming for zero-emission vessels, which means that we need to take a look at vessel efficiency. And this is something that we're quite good at Hydrolift. Normally we would be using vessel efficiency for speed. In this case, we use it for economy. So developing something that can run with less power, which means less battery, which means faster charging times, which in turn means more flexibility and higher frequency on the routes. Then, of course, we need to look at different types of fuels for this, because living in Norway, we kind of take for granted that you can almost pull an electrical cable to charge a ferry anywhere. That's not necessarily the case in all corners of the world. We need to look at different types of production methods. We need this solution to be scalable so that we don't necessarily have to deal with just local production, but also can scale this and sort of have the vessels manufactured in different parts of the world. And of course, lastly, we need to look at technology, which is kind of the point of the day. Now, looking at technology, and I think this goes for a lot of different tech companies out there, is that you kind of look at, you know, wouldn't it be cool to build something like this, to sort of have the technology itself be the driver. And I think, you know, we have a fascination with technology, and I think in a lot of cases we kind of have this moon landing logic, that we're doing it just because it's difficult. But very quickly we need to move away from that, and fortunately in our industry, the benefits of using technology are quite apparent. The obvious one is obviously how we can reduce personnel cost. Personnel costs, and especially I think in our industry, and especially in urban, the urban side of transportation, personnel costs constitute a fairly high percentage of the total overall operational cost. So by reducing or even removing personnel, that's kind of the apparent thing, and say, well, you know, voila, we've saved a lot of money. But I think technology can also be used to, and Jan Leon talked about this as well, to improve operational efficiency. Are there gains out there that we're not seeing at the moment because we don't have enough data, that we don't utilize the data well enough, and so on? I think at the same time, and probably the most important side is safety. Accidents are sort of inexcusable, and they are very expensive, looking at this from a business perspective. And so safety, I think, should be our first and foremost priority here, and not only matching what we're currently able to achieve with sort of humans being in control, but actually trying to surpass that by increasing safety even further, and make a world where using technology is actually a better choice than using people. Now that's a pretty ambitious goal, and I think it's not an easy task to achieve. But the reason I think like this is actually we can actually find the answer in the automotive industry. Increasing degrees of self-driving cars have been coming onto the market for a while, and it's really cool. You know, we sit down and we let go of the steering wheel, and the car kind of does its job, and we're really fascinated by that. But I think there's another side to this that's worth keeping in mind. In the U.S. every year there are about 36,000 fatalities in traffic, so that's a pretty high number. And it's so high that, and again, Jan Leon mentioned this, you know, you don't read about all these accidents, right? The larger ones, you know, involving 50 cars or more, they will get talked about in the media, but the smaller accidents rarely gets any media coverage. But there's an exception to that. And I've just pulled some headlines here. You know, 2 killed in driverless Tesla crash. There's another one here, you know, Tesla autopilot system was on, and so on. And one even talking about, you know, or lawsuits arising from the fact that there were that the autonomous system was engaged when a car crash occurred. And I think this kind of proves my point, is that saying that the minute we introduce technology and we introduce autonomy, we can no longer point to the human factor as a valid excuse for an accident. The responsibility for the accident moves from being tied to a person to being tied to something else. And we don't really know what that something else is yet. So this is the reason why I think, you know, when talking about autonomy or automation in the maritime industry, we must aim higher, which is obviously not easy, but it doesn't stop us from actually moving towards this goal. And here are just some pictures of some of the numerous projects that are out there that have autonomy as a goal. I didn't put a picture of ourselves here, but we could have been on there as well. I would argue that in terms of autonomous application, freight is probably a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of, or a little bit ahead of the sort of passenger-related autonomous projects out there, but not by very much. And there's numerous passenger applications as well coming about. And so we're seeing this, you know, pretty much everywhere, from the channels in Amsterdam, which we're seeing here, to the river in Trondheim, and so on. And it's happening pretty quickly. And, you know, again, going back to the auto industry and comparing how long that has taken, you know, the first sort of automatic system that related to the outside world was actually introduced in the automotive industry almost 30 years ago. And it was Mitsubishi who introduced what has later become the adaptive cruise control. So it's able to see the traffic ahead of it and make corrective action. Now that's still part of or an important part of the autonomous system for cars still ahead, but it's taken 30 years, and as we know, autonomous cars aren't really autonomous yet. And we'll see when that happens. So you would think that by that logic we would have plenty of time to get regulations in place, but obviously we don't. This is happening, and we need to sort of move ahead to sort of figure out how we're gonna deal with this. Now, well, you've probably all seen this picture. It kind of goes to my point, is that safety is the really important factor here, and we need to deal with safety from the very beginning and not sort of get caught up in the technology itself. Fortunately, Norway seems to be ahead of the curve here. We have a very open-minded regulators who are curiously looking at the, you know, what is happening in the technology and how they can deal with it. But there's still a bunch of issues to be resolved. But let's look at first sort of the way we see the status of the market when it comes to one of the challenges, which is technology. So in terms of autonomous vessel, you know, we've come to the point where, you know, can you demonstrate it? And the answer is absolutely yes, you can. It works. Can you pilot it? And I would argue yes. On certain conditions, you can definitely get pilots up and running, and indeed there are many projects aiming to do so. But is it ready for widespread application? My argument would be no. There's still way too many issues to be resolved. There's way too many use cases to consider. And some of the issues, that we need to find an answer for, are in terms of sensor equipment. What type of sensors will be required? What type of sensors will be approved? What manufacturers will be approved, and so on. And then we need to look at redundancy. Will we need to double up on or triple up on different types of equipment, or can we make different types of sensors, combine the output to sort of make a virtual redundancy for a failed sensor at some point. We need to look at communication requirements. And what type of communication equipment will be required? Will there be a need to have some sort of ship-to-ship communication? Is that even necessary if you don't have personnel on board the ship? We need to look at data transfer. How will we deal with latency? What will the requirements be? And then obviously go into data processing requirements. What we will need to process and where? How do we transfer that data? How do we make sure that the data we transfer is the relevant one if we need to invoke some of the backup protocols and so on? And then, of course, all of this ties into testing and verification. Making something work as a pilot is one thing. Making sure that you can roll it out on a widespread basis is something completely different. And we need to sort of come up with ways of verifying the different equipment and making sure that it works, and verifying the overall solution as well. And how long will we need to test that before we can check the box and say that this is okay? So that's technology, and I just it kind of moves us over to another one, which is again one of the sort of unwritten truths of autonomy for the maritime industry. When we talk about humans, will it be a support system, or will it be a completely autonomous system with that is completely unmanned? And I'll try to answer that here and saying that, if we, can we use technology to aid an onboard captain or commander? And the answer is obviously absolutely yes. It's as long as we have someone on board that can seize control of the ship and maneuver it in the traditional way, then absolutely yes. Can we move that function onshore? Again, I would say that conditionally, yes, we can. But not necessarily in all aspects of operations. And then looking at obviously the unmanned vessels, are we ready to do that at the present time? And with a few exceptions, I would argue no. Some of the issues obviously that we need to deal with here is and come up with regulations for is how do we introduce humans in the loop? If we say that the onshore or remote operations center logic is the way forward here, then how do we structure that? Will we need constant one-to-one monitoring? If we do, then that kind of defeats the purpose of introducing this technology in the first place. Why would we even go that way if the cost will remain, more or less the same, which it would be if we need a one-to-one monitoring situation. That brings us to the next question, which is kind of looking at, how can one person monitor more than one ship at a time? Which is, and what would that look like? What kind of condition monitoring would we introduce? Would we look at, sensors that can self-evaluate and say that right now I'm doing good, so you don't have to worry about this, Mr. Onshore Commander? Or is there, and how will all that look? In terms of direct remote control, that's also a question that I think is interesting in this perspective. Is the ability to seize control from a remote station the best solution? It's the logical one because we always think that we can move back to the human, but will the interface be good enough? Will a person be able to seize control of a ship and a minute later make a life or death situation based on screen-based input? Or would it be better to say that the ship kind of continues to guide itself, but receives help to resolve a difficult situation from an onshore operations center with just a guidance more than control. And then the question obviously becomes, what will the requirements be in terms of onboard safety personnel if we don't have a commander on board? And even an interesting point here is talking about the business model for this entire infrastructure in the remote operations center. And I want to bring that up because if the wrong business model is deployed here, we may end up in a situation where people try at any cost to avoid using the remote operations center. And could be tempted to make, shortcuts in terms of technological choices to not engage the remote operations center. This has been, in some instances, a problem in the airline industry, is that the reporting isn't done because you don't want to invoke an extra cost, and so that is something that we need to think about. I'm about to get to sort of the end of my presentation here, but I just want to bring up a few other things that I think are relevant, and especially to our use case. And one of the things we talk a lot about is obviously public acceptance. We're going to bring passengers on board on our vessels. We don't know yet how the public will react to stepping on board an unmanned and autonomously operated vessel. So that's just one of the things that we need to try and see what the public thinks, and adapt accordingly. I think also important to note is that we don't necessarily we can't necessarily tie this down to a specific piece of technology on a specific piece of vessel in a specific in specific waters, because on the water the conditions change, and so we need to frame this in terms of saying, do we have, are the conditions right now suitable for autonomous operation, or are they not? And this is a call any onboard commander would make. Right now I don't feel safe leaving the dock, so I'm going to stay at home. When we need to have the same sort of regulations for autonomous operation. And then an important question here, and I've alluded to this earlier, is obviously accountability. If there isn't an onboard commander, who is then accountable for any incidents or accidents? Will it be the remote operations center? What if that is an outsourced service? Will it be the owner of the technology? Will it be the owner of the vessel? How will that affect insurance? So all of these are things that we kind of need to find the answer for, but that we don't have at the moment. And lastly, with anything like this and sort of moving the bar forward in any industry, are the unknown unknowns, the things that we don't have the imagination to think about right now. But they will come about, and we will see that happening. Coming up with things that we just didn't think about. Very briefly on how we deal with this. So we know that in terms of the challenges we face, we still believe that technology has some way to go. We don't know how the public will accept being transported on an autonomous or unmanned vessel. And obviously, as a natural consequence of all the questions that I mentioned, regulation is still immature. The way we deal with this is that we don't want to wait for technology. We don't want to wait with solving sort of the bigger problem here, which is reducing urban emissions, making a better solution for the urban citizens, which means that we look a lot at how we can save on cost in the meantime. We think that the different levels of autonomy is definitely a cost-saving item. But we also think that there's a lot to be gained from introducing different types of fleet management system and using AI for different purposes than just operating the vessel. Our goal, however, remains that we want to create a fleet of autonomous vessels that aren't just able to navigate between A and B by themselves, but it can actually operate as a fleet without human intervention. Whether that will happen in 5 years or 50 years is anyone's guess. But what we do want to achieve is obviously that going forward, the term "take a hike" will be as mainstream. Let's stop being slightly impolite thing to say and become as mainstream as "let's grab a bus." So with that, I thank you for the attention and open up to any questions in the last minute remaining of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Halvor. You used your time very well, so thanks for that. How does Hydrolift Smart City Ferries see the kind of a multimodal aspect? Because you say, okay, take a hike, but you need to be connected to somewhere. What are your thoughts about that?
That's an interesting question, Jenny. We always get asked, are you going to compete with the buses or whatever? Our answer is no. We complement any land-based alternatives. Obviously, a new offering on water-based offering will change the needs of the land-based mobility as well. So we hope that we at some point can either if we develop something ourselves, or at least connect to smart city solutions out there that can coordinate the mobility needs of a city as they change through the day or through the year. So that is a very important part of our business model, obviously a few years ahead. But we do hope that the industry will come together and sort of create this kind of highly dynamic, on-demand type service that we're seeing from different industries. Any different industries. It's moving away from sort of the scheduled offering to the on-demand offering.
I mean, having these autonomous vessels could also improve those bottlenecks that John Leon was talking about, the 80% bottlenecks, and using those autonomous vessels. But are they only meant for inland waterways, or do we talk about open sea as well?
I think there's a case to be made for open sea travel as well. Our focus is inland waterways. The reason for that is obviously that we want to standardize our design as much as possible to find the efficiency gains and the cost gains that we're aiming for. So that kind of excludes, really rough seas and stuff like that. And the inland waterways are where the demand is highest. And it's where the problem is the biggest. So that's our focus at the moment, but we can definitely, we will definitely look at other things as our company evolves. Excellent.
Thank you so much for your time, Halvor.
Thank you very much.
And good luck further on. We are excited to follow you. Please use the chat. I'm sure you all have some questions. You can still ask questions to both John Leon and Halvor. They will answer them in the chat, or we can ask them later on. I'm sure you have some good remarks or comments or questions. Next one up is from an urban context. We're going to hear from Ulla Tapaninen. She's a professor from the Tallinn University of Technology, and we very much look forward to hear her insights. Please share your presentation, Ulla, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very, very happy and honored to be here today. And as we already heard, there are two major points here when we talk about urban waterway transport. One is the thing that we are not there yet. So you can't really, we are just, the change is coming, but it's not there yet. So I'm going to give you an example what's happening right now, because when we are, it's not only about autonomous, it's the whole concept which you have to think. And in addition to that, we just heard in the previous presentation also that it won't replace the land-based transport. But what will be and what are the challenges? So I hope my presentation will give an overall view how to define and how to plan urban waterway transport. Still 2 months ago, I was working for the city of Helsinki, and we had a challenge that we will be dealing with. We will have a new urban waterway transport route. And the factors we were thinking, first of all, the foremost important was decarbonization. So what will be the solution for the new transport mode? Will it be electric? Will it be hydrogen? What will be the decarbonization solution? Because we in Helsinki, as in all the cities and all around the world, we look for the sustainability. The second stage was the automation, and we defined quite early that it's not ready yet there. We don't have the security rules, we don't have the systems, we don't have all the available systems there ready. So we can't go directly to the automation, but some digital helps is also possible as a safety and navigation assistance. What we have also been thinking, but wasn't actually part of these projects, was the urban waterway transport as a service, like Uber systems that you can that small boats can help you, and on-demand boats. And this actually we have been doing a lot in Helsinki, both electric and both like normal traditional ways, but I won't talk about that so much more. I will tell you more about this, what we did last 2 years in city of Helsinki. This is the present, okay, or let's say 2 years back, but it looks like this present situation about our waterway transport. There's the center of Helsinki, which you can see it's just in a bit left side, and there we have the islands. And just in the middle, down below, there's the Sveabori, Suomenlinna, that is the fortress island, and there lives about 1,000 people. So that is the only place where is all year round waterway transport. So suitable for people who are living on the island and going to work somewhere. All the other lines you see here are only for summer times and only for pleasure business or recreation, going for on holiday time. So practically it works only to 3 to 4 months a year, and you have to carry all the passengers and all the money during that time. And of course, there is in the fleet, there is no problem of ice coverage at those lines. So the present urban fleet, what we have in Helsinki, is listed here, and the average age is 51 years. 51 years. Only 4 of the vessels are built this century, and the oldest ones are more than 100 years old. They are operated by small shipping companies, private companies with very small average turnaround, and so they don't have possibilities to invest, invest on very much on new vessels or something. So this is the way how these pleasure boats, the boats to the recreation islands, has been carried out for years. And there are only 2 all-year-round vessels which are owned by the city, and all the others are carried by. So practically, if you look at the all-year-round waterway transport in Helsinki, there doesn't exist. It's only for that Suomenlinna island, and all these others, even though in the map you could see several ones, they are only for summer times and only for pleasure business. And the problem with the traffic is, of course, that in nice weather there's lots of traffic, and when you don't have such a nice weather, there's hardly anybody over there. So these were the main things we started to think about. Actually, what was kind of funny when we started the whole maritime transport, public transport project, was that we didn't have so many quays in the whole, even though we are by the sea, and you would think that there would be quays for the public waterway transport and water buses, but there was big islands with 20,000-30,000 people living, where was not any quay that the water bus could use if you wanted to have your friends or relatives to go a water bus from one place to another. So we had to really start from the scratch, building up quays. Another point was that, as you could see, there was a lot of small companies, each of them having different tariff systems, and so you couldn't really know where they were going. Each of them have their own web pages, etc. So one of the first things we did, actually, we collected them together, that in the public transport map, and in one place you could find all the routes. But still, the tariff system, it's under its development. Another point was, of course, the energy system. What should be the suitable decarbonization energy system? As you could see, the vessels were very old, and most of them are. I very often said to the politicians, etc., think about your car, what it was like 50 years ago. So we have similar kind of vessels here running. We can't continue this way anymore. And as you could see, there were small companies, so the city has to make bigger share and bigger responsibility on waterway transport. another point is that, do we really have those routes? There are some very nice islands over there, but it's only a few months a year when people are going there, and only on nice weather. So what kind of system we should actually have it on running when there are no people going to work on those routes? So can we build a system where most of the year the vessels are empty? Of course not. So how to carry on that one? And a third very important point was actually like all people who are dealing with public transport know that it's not the speed that is the very important part. It's the turnaround time of the vessels, that the frequency, how often you actually have the vessel going. For the Suomenlinna Island, it's usually from 20 to 40 minutes the frequency, which is actually very, thinking about public transport, that's a long time to wait in the center. So how many vessels we should have, and how sure? And we could very easily see that shorter the distance, the easier it's to have high frequency. So when we compared us to the other cities, we could easily see that the best waterway transport is in the areas where you have a river there, which is crossing the river several times. So you can have your frequency and you can have short crosses and serve the customers easily. So, but we are not by the river, and that is not the way that Helsinki is organized. So that is probably one of the reasons that we are so much lagging behind other cities and other ways. In Norway, there's a little, in Oslo, you have a little bit different, not the system as Copenhagen, but Gothenburg, but still it looks better than what we have in there. But what it happened was that Helsinki started to build a totally new housing area, where you can see here in the middle, called Kruunuvuoren Ranta. There was nobody living there previously, and suddenly there is coming, by the end of this decade, 2030, there is coming about 30 to 40,000 people even there. So it's going to be huge, and people, they can go by cars up there and turn around and go around the city of Helsinki, but of course it takes a lot of time. So there's going to be huge bridges over there, which you can see in the corner, which are going to cost a lot, but there is a big projects going on. But it will take time before the bridges are there. So there came an idea that could there be some additional waterway transport before the bridges are coming, or probably later on also as part of it. That would it be possible to try and to learn, and also to modernize our waterway transport by this from the center of Helsinki to Kruunuvuoren Ranta. And you can see here's the red line where it was going. It wasn't going in the center is there where the red dot is by the railway station in the center. So this one wasn't going to the center, of course, but it would have shortened the time a lot. So this was the route that we started to think with the show. We could manage to do it in a frequency of half an hour. Actually, and in the beginning, we had the idea that let's do it in 20 minutes, that would be perfect. But then if we had to put so much batteries to have enough speed, that and there was no possibility of charging them during the daytime. So we ended up in a situation where the whole ferry was only carrying the batteries, and there was no space for people anymore on the ferry. So we ended up with two ferries having 30 minutes interval and charging them on the way. So and very big question was also the ice coverage. This is the ice coverage on the Baltic Sea last 300 years. But when you look at the last 20 years, you can see that there is not anymore so much ice that there used to be. There will be ice winters. The Helsinki Sea will be frozen, and there has to be. But what is the risk that we have to take? That should we go for a ferry that is only for summertime, or should we go for a very heavy ferry that once in 10 years is able to break the ice, or what's the difference? So we decided to go somewhere between, and so that there is the possibility that every 10 years there is few months when the ferry won't go. But on the other hand, it don't have to be so heavy. It don't have to have so big engines, and so it was able to. So we had this kind of compromise. But this was a big thing to think that can we build a public transport system that is not reliable on all the weather circumstances. We have been used to think that we have to be able to serve the customers in every condition. So you can see on the left side, this is unfortunately in Finnish, but it was a decision by our city council that we will start, make tendering this during next autumn, and this ferry will be built. So so this will be the in several decades the first public urban waterway ferry that city of Helsinki itself is building, and you could see neither the privates have been doing it a lot. And on the other hand, we also started beginning of this summer the same route with an older ferry 2 times a day. So in the morning you could go to work and in the afternoon, but there hasn't been very much people over there because the frequencies, of course, one at 7:30 and 9 in the morning, and I think it was 4 and 6 in the evening or something like that. Not very much frequency. But this is the way where we are going now, and there is no automation here. But I hope this gave you the idea about the challenges and problems we have in this area, and where we have to be going forward. You can see more. This was very slowly, so you can see more in my blog ullatapanen.net about how about the explanation of these things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ulla. There's an immediate question that if you could just state, did you say that the city itself will build and own the ferry?
The city itself will, it's not going to build it, but of course, tender it. Yes, it will be owned by the city, or there can be different kinds of chartering systems as well. But these are now studied more detail during the summer before the tenders go out.
That is obviously very, very interesting as well. I have a question to you as well about the regulation and the standardization, because if we talk about on-demand shuttles and etc., then when we talk about on-demand shuttles, we need to get to the next modality, which might be a bus, a train, or so whatever. But then the systems has to be standardized, the data shared, etc. So what are your quick thoughts about that?
It's step by step. So what we've been doing so far is that the Finnish legislation was changed so that the captain doesn't necessarily have to be on the vessel. That was a big step. But still, all the safety regulations are not there. But we are going step by step in these and testing them out before they can be going.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Ulla. If there are any other questions to her, you can also write them in the chat. And then we thank you for your time, Ulla, and the presentation will also be shared afterwards. Next in line, we have Nanna Thipp. She is a project leader or project manager from Marlog, and she will be talking about the connecting of the smart ships to smart harbors or ports, and we look forward to that. So please, Nanna, you can share your presentation.
Thank you, Jenny. I am sharing it right now, right?
Yes,
it's working.
Thank you.
Okay,
welcome.
I will go through these first slides very quickly because actually what Ervik and Halvor said really inspired me. So I have a lot of things I want to comment on what they said. So yeah, I'm a project manager for Marlog, the Danish cluster for maritime logistics and innovation. We are a collaboration of many former clusters, and we have now been merged together as this super national cluster. We have 3 strategic focus areas, which is green transition, digitalization, and competences. and constantly with the entrepreneurship and internationalization affecting them. As I said, I'm a project manager mainly in the areas of digitalization and competences. And I think this also really speaks to what Halvor and Ervik said about the humans in all of this automatization and digitalization. So I want to comment on that later on. But in our focus area, we have these project VDS Living Lab, Digital Path to Growth, and the Connected Ship, which I'm going to talk about, and SEGMA. But of course, we have many different topics under our scope. The Connected Ship is a Nordic collaboration between all of these companies you see down here, primarily tech companies from Sweden, and then we are collaborating with several Danish shipping companies. And we are funded by Nordic Innovation, which has been a great Nordic collaboration based on trust and sharing of culture and transparency, which has affected the Connected Ship and the way we do the project a lot. The Connected Ship is an IoT platform, and it was developed based on the needs of the ship owners because they wanted to own their own data. As it is right now, there's a lot of closed system on board, which the shipping company then needs to open up and buy their way into. So of course they had a need to see the entire ship and all the systems. So that was the fundamental need that we acted on. And then we have used smart city technology from shore. We have a lot of sensors that we install on the ship, and then we connect the IoT platform to already existing systems. And this could only happen because we are collaborating with the Wärtsilä. So they have actually given us access to their systems to show that we can integrate and we can standardize and we can synchronize the data between ship and shore. And the fact about this open IoT platform is that it is open for once the ship owner own their own data and they can see all the data that is integrated in the platform, and they can access third parties into the platform, which means that suppliers and so on can see the data. It also means that several shipping companies can collaborate on in this platform and see each other's data, and universities and so on. Of course, this only happens if they are allowed. It's very cyber secure and closed in that way, but open if they are allowed and the ship owner own their own data. And one of the exciting things that we found out also in regards to what you said, Halvor, about the pilot and demo, we have demoed this platform at CIT's facilities in Göteborg because we wanted to check if the system is working in a closed setting, which is similar to the ship, before we actually piloted on a real ship. And yes, that was easy, but also necessary, because when we use tech companies from not within the shipping industry, there is a lot of knowledge transfer that needs to be done. So we have actually used a lot of good and great time on understanding each other's world, so that the tech companies actually understands that in shipping it's highly driven by plug and play. You need to develop products that can be on the ship for several years, and that is working very fast, that we can install in a few hours when the ship is in harbor. All of these small pieces of knowledge we have been merging together to actually understand each other's world. So yeah, this project is very much based on collaboration, not only collaboration between us Nordic countries, but also between several different industries, and between a tech industry and a shipping industry, which do not understand, somewhat not understand each other. and also between the ship and the shipping company. So as it is right now, and through our collaboration with Maersk Tankers, we want to show the seafarers on board the same data as we show on shore, so that they can actually collaborate in operating the ship as efficient as possible. And this is also, of course, because Maersk Tankers wanted to be data-driven, and that this is part of the green transition, as you talked about before, which is very happening and unavoidable. So what we have been looking at is actually these noon reports and the quality of data, so that the shipping companies can become data-driven and actually use all of this data which is produced on a ship. I made a lot of notes in regards to what Erik and Halvor said, and maybe we can talk about them in the end of this webinar. The next, we are actually already working on the next phase concerning the connected ship, because we see that this is so much a need in the industry, and that we can do a lot with this platform. And we have been looking into maybe this ship and harbor collaboration. You mentioned aspects as just in time and all of these. And in Marlock, we are very concerned with the entire supply chain. So actually going from ship to harbor to land-based transportation is in the scope for us. And we are working with a lot of sensor data to track goods, asset, maintenance, people. And then we want to apply AI and machine learning to actually use all of this data. And the reason why we find the harbor so interesting is that the harbor environment, or what you can say, is also very complex. It's a closed system with all these different stakeholders trying to collaborate, trying to digitalize, but still many things are not digitalized. So we see a need, and we see that our platform can actually help and do something in this area. We have also checked areas as sharing of real-time weather data, and also regarding the crew, this crew change, and also people working in the harbor, making sure that we know where everybody is, and so on. And this is, of course, primarily the smaller to medium-sized harbors, because the big ones is already doing most of this stuff. So yeah, we are thinking about moving to this next phase of the project. But actually right now we are standing before a pilot with Maersk Tankers, and as I said before, a big part of the ship is actually equipment. So us integrating this platform on a ship, opening all of these small doors to every little box and every closed system, has been a lot of work, a lot of very interesting work. And luckily for us, everybody has been very willing to share and open up. And I think this is actually what is happening in shipping right now, that many of both suppliers and the shipping companies, they are seeing that we need to open up and share data to face the future of shipping. I am actually done. Of course, I had these points I wanted to discuss maybe with in the end of the webinar. I think especially the points about responsibility concerning safety and situational awareness. Do we need to trust the system, the tech, or is it still legally the seafarers who have the responsibility? These matters is, in my perspective, very interesting. So yeah, Jenny, do you have a question?
Yeah, I do actually, but I think it's good, interesting, and maybe Halvor, and if Jon Leon are, if you're still here, maybe you want to turn on your cameras if Nana has some questions as well, and maybe Ulla as well. When you talk about that platform, you don't start with small vessels. You said Maersk Tanker. That's a huge one. You're not thinking of the ship and harbor interaction to start with smaller. Isn't that one would think that maybe?
Concerning this next phase of the project, we have actually been in dialogue with several piloting companies and smaller ships. Because the connected ship is the point about connected ship is that we are using low range VLAN, because there is no connection doing on ships sailing on the bigger waters. So we needed a system that can collect data, but not through 5G or Wi-Fi. But when we have actually looked at harbors where they have put up these big 5G masts, so to investigate that part of it. And in concerns to piloting, they need constant information live. So of course we will be needing 5G and smaller vessels.
Mm.
Yeah.
Very good. You said you had written down quite a lot. Do you have any specific questions to for instance, Halvor from Hike? You mentioned there about the safety and the security.
Yeah,
but,
it's because for us in the connected ship, we have the company called LifeFinder in our project team, and they have sensors which can be put in the clothes, and they can detect if a seafarer is falling, wet, cold, all of these safety aspects. But I think when we talk about safety, we need to consider, is it safety 1 or 2? Is it control? Or is it actually based on trust and people doing their work every day in a nice way? And I think when I speak to seafarers, they are very concerned about, okay, it's nice with all of these helping systems, but am I the one who have the responsibility, or is it the tech systems? Do we need to listen to them? Are they a helper? Or is it you have to listen to them and they control you? And I think these aspects are very interesting in shipping.
Halvor, you were talking a little bit about the liability and when we talked about autonomous. Do you have a comment on that?
I think it's really, it's not necessarily about autonomy, but it's as a consequence of autonomy and the removal of let's say a commander or crew on board a passenger vessel, for instance. I think it's really interesting what you mentioned there, Nana, about using sensors. Because obviously, one of the things we as humans do is that we can very easily detect anxiety, for instance. So a commander on board a passenger vessel can detect that people are becoming more anxious and things like that. What if you don't have a person on board? How do you do that? So we've been looking at a very conceptual level for now, but looking at ways to use computer vision and artificial intelligence to detect anxiety in a crowd, for instance, which could then trigger an action either through a PA announcement or some other things. And I think these aspects are super important because it ties into the feeling. One thing is the absolute sort of quantifiable safety. The other one is the feeling of safety. And I think all of these are aspects that we need to address as we move sort of to a world where we have less crew or even no crew.
I agree. And we have also been collaborating with the Orca and Deep Sea, who are two companies working with AI and with this perspective of seeing the ship in a holistic way. We collect data of all the ship things, and Orca, I think, is working a lot and in the right way with safety, enhancing this situational awareness by adding tech, helping people instead of controlling them. And
And of course,
do you have sorry, Halvor, yes.
An interesting aspect here is obviously GDPR. and what you're allowed to do, and that's that sometimes, it's to your point, Nana, about do we do this for control or do we do it, as a service?
Yeah, and a lot on a ship is already very controlled. So adding another layer of more procedures, more control, more, I don't, and in my discussion with Maersk, they are actually agreeing on this. Of course, the ship needs to be total safe and all the procedures needs to be in place, but not adding extra. And not taking responsibility away from the seafarers. It was actually Maersk who wanted the dashboard to be on board so that the seafarers can follow their own performance and data. So it's not the shipping office telling them, now you need to do something because we can see in your data that something is going wrong. I think this is a very important point in adding sensor data to the ship.
Ulla, have you working with the city encountered these kind of questions and problems from the city as well when thinking about how the user should be feeling safe?
I've been also working very closely with cargo shipping companies, both in ro-ro and bulk shipping, and there we can easily see that we shouldn't just go over to the first step that we took totally without personnel over there, but we have to take step by step. And one of the good things actually what we've been doing this year is the pilotage, that instead of having pilots coming from ashore, you can do that one remotely. And we've been testing that in Sweden, and now I think it was this summer, and the same thing will be tested in Finland around December, if I remember right. So you can take bit by bit, and having a pilot on board, it's extremely expensive business because you have to have those pilots. So you have to have the whole system. You have to have them ready. You have to have, in any weather, you have to get them on board. It is very, very complicated process which costs a lot, and to have an assistance for that would be a huge step forward, and it wouldn't affect the crew on the board directly. Of course, indirectly it's easy. And then the next step is to have a certain kind of assistance on board that when somebody's there alone, he has to be monitor everything. That's of course happening already. We are taking step by step these things. So I don't think there's a big change, but that's one of the reasons why I think that the cargo will be the first one, especially on the long routes where there can be days where you don't actually see anybody, and then on a step by step. And the cruising business, the city transport, urban waterway transport will be actually the last ones, just because it's that people need somebody on board. But of course, there's a question that what are the qualifications for the personnel? Do they have to have a captain's degree, or can they be some other personnel who are trained to serve people over there if something happens, etc., and stop the vessel and wait for the assistance? So I see that it takes a step by step. One of the things we also have to understand that there is actually lack of seafarers in the world at the moment. So this is a trend that will also have an effect for the automation. There are all the time less and less people who are willing to spend their days and weeks and months away from their families.
Thank you, Ulla. I see that the time is also closing in a little bit now, and I guess you, Nana, have a lot of more comments. I can see that. I hope we can connect with both Halvor and the coastal administration, and I think this is where you came in from, is the testing part and the piloting part, and Halvor also mentioned that. I mean, we need to test and pilot in order to get the user acceptance, which is important here, and that you all mentioned. I thank you so much for your time. We will hear now from Henrik Morgan, he's the director from EIT Urban Mobility, and he will have his closing remarks, and I'm sure he's something to comment on what you just said as well. So thank you all, and Henrik, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you all. Yes, I would like to just quickly offer my let's say flyover of some of the insights made here, and also give you some ideas and hints how we can continue to connect in this community around this mission and vision that I think we share here today. So first, we did hear Jon Erik from Norwegian Coastal Administration pointing out that maritime transport is really ancient and it's global, but also it has seemed to be forgotten somehow. And I think this was a remark and observation also iterated by several of the other speakers later. So Halvor also pointed out that rapid acceleration is happening and that automation and particularly digitization are the key drivers. And where we are from 15 years, he didn't actually dare to give a vision on that, because this can really accelerate within the next few years. I think he offered then two very important key points. And again, this was also reiterated by some of the other speakers. First is that the transport systems on waterborne transport, be it in inland or urban, or be it in freight, or be it in passenger transport, it is a part of a multimodal system. And I think that is particularly true when we talk in urban and inland water context. So the waterborne part of the journey is part of the journey only. And that's why integration and the connection to the onshore facilities and instances is particularly important. The other key point, I think, was that maritime technology and systems will, for the foreseeable future, first and foremost serve to support humans rather than being, let's say, completely autonomous. And Halvor from Hydrolift Smart City Ferries kind of took over on the same route, says, yes, autonomy is here, it's happening, but Halvor also listed quite a few of outstanding technology issues or challenges to be resolved, and also pointed back again and again to the fact that safety is really at the core of this in order to scale maritime transport, particularly for passengers, and particularly maybe in urban and highly trafficked areas. So safety needs regulation, and we are actually also in need of innovation in the not only in the regulatory framework here, but also new formal and officially accepted testing and verification measures. And finally, Halvor also pointed to the outstanding challenges related to the human factor or human interfaces. So this is not only about social and public acceptance, which is an issue in its own right, especially in urban contexts and with passenger transports involved, of course, but also the human factor interfaces in terms of all the technology and the governance, and also to find new business models where we can operate more waterborne transport as part of the multimodal transport system, particularly for passengers. So Ulla Tappinen from Taltech, using very much Helsinki as an interesting case, also confirmed what is happening. It is happening, but we are not there yet. And there was an interesting case there in Helsinki, pointing to also an important fact here that the maritime transport is seen by municipalities and others also as part of a more sustainable transport solution. So the energy system, the propulsion, is as important as other aspects such as safety, and in the case of Helsinki and other sites, practical issues like ice coverage and let's say annual operation, and a business case again for this, versus this, let's say, a shipping, an urban shipping industry that in many cases has been not developed very actively for several years. So there will also need to be some new business models and changes on the organizational and governance side of things. And then finally, Nina Cheat from Malloc also emphasized this key linkage between digitalization and the human competences needed, and as the third point, the need for governance or regulation that is accepted basically on a global scale, or at least where these transport corridors exist. And we had very interesting insights in the connected ship, and also the fact that plug-and-play solutions are really what is asked for, and the ship as an IoT platform. And at the end of the day, data-driven shipping is the concern for the freight transport. But in the next phase of the project, Nana showed us how the connected ship, to connect that to the smart harbor, is perhaps even a bigger mouthful, where key technologies as artificial intelligence and machine learning will and the data interfaces will add on, leaving alone also again the interfaces to regulatory and onshore authorities, for example, to regulate and provide safe and secure travel. With these insights, I would invite you all to, of course, read through the slides that will be sent out after this, but also with ITS Norway and Innovation Norway and the Norwegian Embassy here in Copenhagen, we are organizing a face-to-face but also hybrid get-together on the 22nd of September, where the ITS Nordics and the ITS Baltics and EIT Urban Mobility community, we will meet here in Copenhagen, but you can also join online and discuss further on some general ITS issues that we share. And we do this as a preparation for a very important event where we think many of you would be interested to attend. So the ITS World Congress in Hamburg, taking place 11th and until 15th of October. So the city of Hamburg is part of EIT Urban Mobility Network, and I think even present here today. And we will send a slide through with a clickable link where you can see now that it has been officially confirmed. The event will take place in the real world, so face to face. And there will also be very interesting sessions for this audience, including for the first time a global freight and ports forum in the program, and also there will be a particular focus on Congress port cities, from Singapore to Los Angeles to Zhuzhou, and of course with Hamburg and our Scandinavian and Baltic ports and cities by the sea as interesting cases. So with this, I would like to, on my side, close for now and hand back to Jenny, and thank you all for attending.
Thank you so much, Henrik, for those very good closing remarks. On that note, I do not have any more words because I think you summed it up very well. Thank you so much for your time, everyone, and I wish you all a great day, and the link will be shared with you afterwards. Have a good day now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.